Hello and welcome to our session, Enhancing Qualitative Social Science Research with GIS. We are thrilled to be able to offer this workshop for the first time at Esri with a focus on qualitative approaches.
Hi everyone, my name is Lakeisha Coleman and I'm a solution engineer on the state government team and I'm based in the Atlanta, Georgia office. I've been with Esri about a year and a half now and my background is in geography and sociology, and I first got into GIS back in 1999 at Georgia State University in my geography program, so thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Lane Graham. I'm a solution engineer on the National Government Sciences team based in DC, and I have been with Esri for 3 years now. And I first got my start with GIS back in my archaeological field days using a total station or Trimble unit in the field to conduct research and understand spatial and temporal relationships of past occupations within the environment.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Jones. I'm the team lead for user experience research here at Esri. I'm based in the Redlands office and have been with Esri about 5 years. My background is primarily in cultural and applied anthropology, and I currently apply this at Esri by helping our software teams and different teams across the company to do research to inform their designs and decision making.
Thanks, Kyle. So we wanted to start off by giving you a quick overview of the workshop itself. So we'll talk a little bit about why we're doing this workshop, as well as dive into some of the different data types. So this is going to include your qualitative and quantitative data types. We'll look at a few research methodologies that have been pretty popular in social science research in recent years, as well as look at tools and applications to help support you in your work. Lane and I will also give a couple of demonstrations, and then in the end, we'll open it up for discussion. So why are we here? Why are we putting on this workshop? As we were organizing this, we were thinking of this in a critical GIS approach, bringing together social science theory concerns along with GIS. And so think of this as the combination of geographic information science along with critical geographical and social theory. One of the goals of this workshop is to also help you expand your ideas about what you consider to be geospatial data. A lot of times we work with many data types and don't understand that we can still have that geospatial aspect to it. So we might end up throwing data away or just not using it. We're also hoping to promote the inclusive, critical, and open nature of the research of qualitative social science research. And in doing so, we're hoping to also enhance the social scientist's use of GIS. So let's look at some qualitative data items. So qualitative data tends to be that descriptive, typically unstructured or semi-structured text a lot of times, or just unstructured data, but it does come in a lot as text. Think of this also as unstructured in the sense that nothing's been coded, nothing has been pulled out in terms of a variable. Categorized thematically or based on properties, attributes, labels, and other identifiers. One common one here is just simply nominal data, names. Qualitative data also tends to ask the question or even answer the question of why. Why is something going on? Some examples of qualitative data could come from open-ended and non-numerical data, concepts, descriptions, meanings, language, media, perceptions, and sentiments or feelings. And a lot of times when we're working with that qualitative data, some of those common methodological approaches could include interviews, focus groups, observation, ethnography, case studies, phenomenologies, surveys, and grounded theory. And this isn't even all of them. So we'll dive in some quantitative data for just a bit, and then we'll come back to the theme of the workshop, which is qualitative data. So Lane will go into some quantitative pieces.
As GIS analysts and social science researchers that leverage mixed methods, we're no stranger to quantitative data. Traditional quantitative data approaches often leverage mathematical or computational models. They ask questions about how much or how many. And in terms of social science research, it's typically observed as a systematic examination of social phenomena. And these use statistical models or mathematical theories to develop and accumulate and refine a scientific knowledge base. This is typically trying to arrive at generalizable findings, which can be characterized by hypothesis testing, larger sample sizes, standard measures, deductive approaches, and kind of typical instruments for data collection. When we are asking these questions, so about how much or how many, sometimes the question about why is lost. And so bringing in qualitative approaches helps to enhance quantitative data collection. So even though we're asking similar questions, we could look at them from different approaches. This is where geospatial data types come in. Whether you're talking about qualitative or quantitative approaches, location is an important factor in geospatial data collection, visualization, analysis, and dissemination. Geospatial data often refers, of course, to shape, size, and location. And this could be visualized in terms of a point, a line, a polygon, a polyline, an annotation, as long as it has a spatial representation and location, which is an X and Y coordinate that's built into the metadata to tell us where we are geographically. Data transformation is essentially providing a spatial location or reference to data that doesn't previously have it. So think about a tabular data set that you've created or that's been shared with you in the form of a CSV or an Excel file that has information related to location, but it's not presented in a spatial format. So we can take qualitative and quantitative data that's tabular or in the form of unstructured content and geo-enable it. Sometimes this is a rigorous process that involves validation and ground truthing. We are able to then identify patterns and use multiple methods to triangulate these findings. So it might be a combination of both qualitative and quantitative data in a spatial context. Now that we've taken some time to define what qualitative and quantitative social science research approaches exist, and how social science researchers can leverage geospatial information to enhance their workflows, let's turn our attention to what the modern social science researcher has available in their toolkit. Not only do they have access to a variety of different contextual data sources, such as satellite imagery or population statistics, but also contributions from the open data community. These can be accessible through ArcGIS Online, imagery can be found in the Living Atlas, as well as authoritative data that's contributed from a variety of sources. Community analysts can be a powerful tool to provide population statistics and enrich information in your data set. Data collection and creation is also enhanced within our platform. Surveys, smart forms, and location intelligence can be provided using Survey 123 or ArcGIS field maps. Not only do you have the ability to collect features and enhance the social science research process in the field, but you can do this quickly and easily, and it's all interconnected. Qualitative social science researchers can leverage the powerful spatial analysis tools to identify patterns and relationships in their data, leveraging ArcGIS Online or the robust geoprocessing tools in ArcGIS Pro. If you need to create publication quality figures, you can use ArcGIS Maps for Creative Cloud, which has a bridge with Illustrator and Photoshop. Collaboration and dissemination are enhanced with ArcGIS as well. Whether you're trying to create an engaging experience for a diverse audience, or you're trying to share information that you've created throughout your research, you can leverage tools such as ArcGIS Hub to disseminate information, share project work, and you can embed content like story maps or immersive experiences so that the public, other scientists, and researchers can not only see the results of your work, but they can actually access data and information that's been contributed and shared.
Great. Thank you, Lane. Next, I'm going to highlight some of the differences and interconnections between qualitative and GIS methodologies, and then go over some real-world examples of studies that have combined these different approaches. Talking about qualitative data in the world of GIS and social science research can mean a lot of different things. For many GIS practitioners, qualitative data comes in the form of things like open text survey responses, ad hoc or unstructured feedback, or user-defined attributes. Additionally, recent programming or AI tools have been developed that can automatically pull out certain kinds of information from documents, images, or videos, or that can do things like score sentiment. In these contexts, qualitative data is utilized as another kind of data point among many others, and must be collected, classified, and extracted in such a way that they can easily be integrated into GIS workflows or tools. So most of the time, the goal behind this is to create what's often called an authoritative view of something, or measuring and defining boundaries or entities from a top-down or expert-driven kind of point of view. So the underlying question framing how qualitative data is often encountered in a lot of GIS work is usually along the lines of, how can I organize, quantify, or make sense of this kind of non-numerical data that I have? But to people like human geographers, sociologists, anthropologists, and many other researchers, qualitative data can mean something quite different. Here it consists of things like notes and reflections generated through field-based observation, interview recordings and their corresponding transcripts, photos or videos taken by the researcher or participants, or any number of digital or material things relevant to the project at hand. In contrast to the single authoritative view that a lot of GIS work aims to create, qualitative researchers are often focused on understanding things from multiple perspectives and understanding people's worlds on their own terms. This means that qualitative researchers often employ participatory methods that enable research participants to become collaborators, who can then create their own data about their lives and better steer research priorities to local concerns. So the underlying question framing how many social researchers encounter qualitative data is often along the lines of, how can I comprehend and convey lived realities on their own terms? And while qualitative and GIS methodologies have often been seen as at odds with one another, over the last decade or so, that perception has changed. Researchers and practitioners across these various fields have sought out new ways to understand the importance of space and place and are interested in utilizing new technologies to do so. They're also looking for new ways to visualize and analyze their data, and new ways to tell stories about the relationship between people and places, oftentimes with the aim of communicating to new audiences. So not surprisingly, there's been some interesting mixed method and multidisciplinary projects that have emerged from and helped define this growing field. And we're going to touch on these more in the next slides and in our demos. So with this framework, we can start to see how different kinds of researchers and practitioners come to qualitative data and what they're trying to do with it. So next, I'm going to highlight some examples of projects that illustrate a variety of approaches to doing social research with GIS, and which can be located in different parts of this framework. One main area where qualitative and GIS approaches have been applied is in ethnographic and mixed method studies. For example, Singer used ArcGIS Collector, which is a mobile app, to record spatial data as well as field note jottings and photos during participant observation, as well as go-along interviews in the field. In a different study, researchers collected drone imagery with drones, as well as manually mapped and digitized certain features within a community, and combined that with digital sketch mapping as well as semi-structured interviewing. In yet another study, the researcher coined the term map elicitation, borrowing from the approach of photo elicitation, but instead of using photos, they used digital maps and other GIS outputs as interviewing tools, which they could use to prompt discussion as well as reflection with their respondents. And lastly, numerous government agencies and civilian science initiatives have used things like ArcGIS Survey 123 to collect locational as well as qualitative data for various projects. So next, Lane is going to briefly talk about a couple of these examples.
Thanks, Kyle. In this example, we see participatory sketch mapping in action. Participants are able to annotate directly on a digital base map. In this case, we have high-resolution drone imagery to represent the community in an area where satellite imagery was of insufficient resolution. And so this helps to guide participants in orienting themselves to provide information about boundaries and contribute local knowledge to inform us about changes or perceptions in their community. So we see here a couple of different representations of hotspots and kind of a density analysis of where participants most perceived their local boundaries to exist. And this allowed us not only to capture the physical boundaries, but also to better understand why that particular location was bounded the way that it was by a participant. A variety of reasons could be contributed, and all of these help us better understand how people that live within this community relate to the surrounding social and physical landscapes. In this example, this is a quick capture survey that it created to be able to understand perceptions of safety in a local community. So this would kind of fall under the category of phenomenology, trying to understand the cause or nuances, concerns, experiences that participants have specifically around their perceptions of safety within their community. This allows them not only to capture a photograph to illustrate their sentiment, but also to provide comments to contextualize it. These can be then inductively coded and thematically sorted to better understand patterns between participants about the perceptions of safety, kind of keywords that are used, and why. and the ability to have those qualitative contributions and dial into why a particular area might feel safe or unsafe helps us to better understand the participant's perspective. So Quick Capture allows us not only to collect individual responses, but to see those in conjunction with multiple participants that are engaging in the study. So here we can highlight extremes in the terms of contribution and see particularly unsafe areas, and then be able to understand patterns between participants, perhaps about what unsafe areas equate to. Maybe it's poor lighting or unclean conditions, or maybe it's unwelcoming, just a number of different things that we could sort out to kind of represent what unsafe might mean to participants in this particular study.
Another area where we see qualitative data and GIS converging is in the realm of qualitative data analysis and visualization. In their paper, Young and Elwood identified three main approaches of how this is often done. The first one is in geovisualizing qualitative data. So in other words, identifying specific places in your data, in your interview transcripts or in your field notes, and manually mapping those in some kind of mapping tool. So in extracting things like place names or charting movement patterns, or otherwise demarcating areas, relevant areas from those qualitative data into some kind of digital map. The second approach that they identified was attaching or hyperlinking qualitative data within a GIS. So this could be including something like a quote or a photo or a video, and placing that within a point on a map. In ArcGIS, this is often done in pop-ups. So when you click on a certain point or area, you get this pop-up, which can kind of showcase this different qualitative data and how it relates to a particular place. And lastly, they talked about different workflows that use the georeferencing or geocoding tools inside of qualitative data analysis software like Atlas TI, NVivo, or MaxQDA. Some of the language and kind of UI for these features is different between them, but they seek to kind of bridge the gap between a traditional GIS as well as the kind of tools that qualitative researchers most often use. And I think in most cases, these files that are generated can be exported as KML or KMZ files and then imported into ArcGIS or other mapping tools. Lastly, new technologies have enabled researchers to sift through large amounts of unstructured text data. So creating things like place-based word clouds with SQL or Python. So for example, taking things like social media posts that have both text content and locational data, and using these tools to create word clouds based on word frequency or other factors, and then maybe being able to map these posts based on their location data. Another example is using ArcGIS API for Python or similar tools to do exploratory text analysis of large-scale survey data. So open-ended text responses from a survey and being able to quickly try to identify some of the key concerns from these responses. And then lastly, using ArcGIS Locate XT to automatically identify, extract, and map locational data from large amounts of unstructured text. This tool in ArcGIS Pro is able to sift through and look at for various formats of addresses and place names and other things that you can train it to look for, and automatically identify these things in large bodies of text, and then provide suggested locations for these on a map. And the next Lane will provide a brief example of some of these.
Manually sorting through hundreds of documents to find key information can be a daunting task. Luckily, social science researchers have some additional tools in their toolkit. Natural language processing allows us to systematically sort through unstructured data in the form of documents or text and bring this information in to search for things like place names, key terms, dates, and coordinates to extract information that might be pertinent to our area of interest. So in this example, we are looking for archaeological sites, and we're interested specifically in where they are, what their name is, how long ago they were discovered, and we see here we have a variety of different types of information in these documents. So we'll create a custom gazetteer, provide some properties and suggestions for our extraction of unstructured data. So So here we're able to have some custom attributes such as the country name, XY coordinates, and then some contextual information around date. So we see the site and location name are kind of key areas of interest that we can capture, as well as the date in a particular format. And we can also set it to analyze documents in Spanish or a variety of other languages. After this tool is run, it has some suggested sites, and we can go through and perform validation of these locations, as well as sort them. So we can sort them by category. In this case, it's by when the site was discovered. And what we're able to do then is configure the pop-ups to be able to have a link to the source document. So we can go and find where this information was derived and have contextual information to validate our findings. So now I'll hand it over to Lakeisha to provide a demonstration of ArcGIS story maps for qualitative research. Lakeisha?
Great, thank you. So what I'd like to show you are a couple of different ways Esri has made it easy to get started with working with qualitative data in GIS, as well as a way to present or disseminate your research or work. If you're not familiar with story maps, I recommend giving this a try, as this is a pretty easy way for qualitative researchers to begin using Esri products. So what you see on the screen now, capture and share mental maps, perceptions, and experiences, was built inside of ArcGIS story maps. So we tend to use story maps for a variety of reasons. If you need to add that stronger sense of place to your narrative or even illustrate those spatial relationships, and we're always interested in telling the story with geography. Adding visual appeal and credibility to your ideas, as will be illustrated by Lane's great story map coming up. Embedding other Esri applications is also easy, such as maybe a survey that you made in Survey 123, so you're making it more interactive. And then lastly, you can also use it as a presentation platform, so present your work as I'm doing here. First, I want to dive in briefly to my past dissertation project, which involves sketch mapping and participatory mapping. The title of my dissertation was Navigating Food Deserts, a Geoethnography of Atlanta Residents' Experiences, Routines, and Perceptions. So again, one aspect was to engage the community and get more detailed look into their experiences in accessing food. In doing so, I needed to understand where the participants shopped and why. The why came about in the interviewing process. So one way I did this a few years ago, which was not ideal, was to capture the participants' mental maps and what they perceived to be around them by using paper maps. I printed paper maps for the participants to essentially point out those locations on the map. As you see here with this participant, the home location, the black dot, where they actually lived compared to their perceived home location where they thought they lived, and similarly with the perceived closest store location, thereby passing the other green dots, which were the closer stores. One thing that came up, which has implications for other research and exploration, is how much people were unaware of their own space or geography, so spatial awareness in general, but this could have also been a matter of scale, as certain details couldn't be seen. So going back to the point about the interviewing process, getting data that I probably would not have been able to get without interviewing my participants. So this case was understanding the why a person shopped where they did. So in looking at this map, I would see that my participant lived in downtown Atlanta to the top side of this map versus where they shopped and where they worked to the south. Without interviewing this participant, I would not really understand why they would shop so far away from home. The other big idea in the research was in regarding food access was that people assume that you will shop at the store closest to you, closest to your home. But we cannot always make that assumption, obviously. In this case, this participant shopped when they got off work or during their lunch break, but also because one of their cousins worked at this particular store. And these are details that just by plotting that quantitative data, the food stores and residents on the map, I can't get that information otherwise. So we cannot make assumptions about where the person goes just because of proximity. So this is that importance of including that qualitative element into your data. Adding that element to the quantitative data, or mixing my methods, if you will, added a more comprehensive understanding. So that was the way I did this a few years ago. Printing paper maps, not ideal. One of the ways you can do this today, it's very easy, and I wish I had this available to me back then, is with Express Maps. So Express Maps are built within Story Maps, and they're going to be handy for when you need to add maps for those activity spaces, or you want to sketch out mental maps and really do that quick data collection even. And the goal was to make cartography as simple as possible so anyone can add focus maps at the right time. This is an example of an express map within my story map. As you see, there are quite a few different features on here. I have annotation boxes, I have lines and points, and I can also draw polygons if needed. For annotation, these are going to be the text boxes that stay on your map the whole time, as opposed to when you interact with the map and hover or click and you can get the pop-ups for more information. Also, for those features, I can add images to attach to those features for a more of a story-like feel. We have some call-out options as well as arrows that you can kind of point out those details for something. So this would have been handy for me if I were taking notes and wanting to indicate why a particular shopper shopped where they did, or why this route was taken. So in creating an express map, I'll show you how to do this. Within the Story Maps framework, I can go and add another element. And when you open this Add button, you will see all the different types of elements that you can add to a story map. So this is how you would go about building out that story. I can add images, video, audio, and also embed those other applications within here. So I'll go ahead and click on Map so I can add this express map. You actually have the choice to add a map that already exists, perhaps in your organization, or you can right here create a new express map. You can either zoom to your location on the map, or in this case, I'll go ahead and just type in my city, Atlanta, Georgia, zoom into this area. And I know I also want to change the base map to kind of go with the more simplified street map. So I'll go over to my options, and also within here, you'll see more map configuration options. We have quite a few base maps to choose from, and I'll choose this Human Geography Light base map and zoom in a little closer to my study area. And next, I'm going to add a few points to my map. And when you draw features on your map, they will appear on the left-hand panel, kind of your table of contents here. We have a few tools available up top. Undo and redo are really handy. I'm going to add some numbered points. You can also add simple dropped pins as well. In this case, a numbered point, the first one will be my home location, or maybe your participant's home, however you'd like to categorize this. You can add an image or also more of a description, and that would be what would come up in the pop-up later on. I'll add a point for a work location. I can also change the colors here. Do a point for school. And then lastly, I'll also add a point for a shopping location. So here are my points in my drawn features table, and if I need to reorder these points at any moment, I can just drag and drop those to the preferred order, and those numbers will change accordingly. We also have some line drawing features if you need to capture a route or kind of connect that sequence of events. So I'll draw a line here. Maybe this is the home to work route. And it's also the same idea. You can add images and change the description as well. If you like more of the freehand drawing, we do have that option. And notice also that when you do draw the lines, you get the sequence of points. These are the vertices that if you need to go back and edit that line or clean it up a little, you can just click on one of those and drag it over to where you want. So make this a work to school route. And if you need to draw areas, we also have those drawing options as well. Maybe you need to delineate a certain boundary. And we have a few options for how you can draw those areas on your map. Perhaps you'd like to add annotation, some simple notes onto your map. And remember, these annotations will stay on your map and will always be visible as you're viewing the map, unlike the pop-ups. So maybe I'll add a note regarding a participant shopping at a certain location after school during the week. And annotations are not stuck on the map wherever you drop them. You can move them around the map. And you can also add leader lines. So I'll grab this bottom part and attach it here. Or if you would like arrows with arrowheads, you can draw those on the map as well. Let's kind of hard to see right now. I'll change the color of this. It's a white arrow drawn here. And when you actually work with the arrow, you'll see that you also get the vertices to kind of move around if you need to change the shape or where that arrow is pointing. And lastly, I'll show you how you can group your features that you put into your map. So in case things get a little out of control and you want to consolidate and organize this a little better, you can create groups, and essentially I can just drag and drop these features into that particular group. This may also cut down on some of the description or the labeling that you would need. So if I know I put this in Lakeisha's group, that is her home, work, school, and shopping. And that is pretty much it for this express map that I've just drawn. I'll click on Done. And when I do so, this will take me back to my Story Maps page. And I will now see that new express map embedded into my story map. And here we are. So express maps, these are going to be handy to make if you need to add that quick locator to your story. If you maybe want to capture perceived space, maybe boundaries to be drawn on a map, sequence of events, or even routes. And express maps are also going to be very interactive, so a lot better than the paper maps that I was working with a few years ago. And remember, it also stays inside the story maps framework, so you don't have to hop out of your story map to go make a map in desktop or ArcGIS online. All of this can be done within your story map itself. And lastly, what I discovered as I was creating story maps and express maps, just kind of playing around with this, I thought, wow, this would have been great if I had this a few years ago to capture my field notes. As we all know, when we're doing qualitative work, the importance of capturing our field notes that day immediately after the observation is key to also make sure we don't lose any of that information. So this would have been super handy for myself, participating, observing, and jotting notes. These are actually chapters from writing ethnographic field notes that I thought were especially applicable in this instance. From field to desk, creating scenes on the page, pursuing members' meanings, and also it could help in coding and memoing later on. So that's express maps within story maps in a nutshell, and hopefully that has helped spark some ideas for how you can use this in your research later on. Next, Lane is going to show some more uses of our technology with mixed methods data collection with factors related to sense of place. Thank you.
Thanks, Lakeisha. This next demonstration, Building Data from the Ground Up, covers a variety of ArcGIS products that served as solutions to enhance qualitative research in a data-scarce environment. Since 2016, I've been working as a mixed methods researcher in Hopkins Village, a small coastal community located in Belize in Central America. This community is comprised of about 3,000 individuals and historically relied on fishing and subsistence-based activities. In the last decade or so, there's been a shift towards tourism, and a lot of changes have occurred in this community as a result, development being one of them. I was interested in seeing how not only the physical landscape had changed, but also how the social landscape and dynamics might be changing. Data capture can come in a variety of forms, and this particular situation called for high-resolution base map imagery. Visiting the community multiple times a year since 2016 has not only allowed us to capture high-resolution base map imagery to inform our qualitative research, but it's also provided us with a way to see development occur over time. Not only was it critical for us to gather this baseline data, but it was also critical to transfer these skills that we were acquiring as part of solutions back to the community. So we engaged in training and knowledge transfers along the way. We were able to develop our research questions in conjunction more holistically with the community because there was a dialogue from the very beginning about what was important to them to capture. Now we're going to dive into the how-to. SiteScan for ArcGIS is an end-to-end cloud-based drone mapping software that's designed to collect imagery, process it in the cloud, and provide a baseline for analysis. It maintains a complete picture of your drone inventory and flight history with automatic fleet management. And it allows for imagery products to be managed and shared via a browser and through just a simple click shared to ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise to be collaborative. SiteScan for ArcGIS has an iOS application that allows you to manage your fleet, launch autonomous flights, and even add in previously collected imagery like this orthomosaic from 2019. I can access previously flown flight plans or create new ones. I can draw directly onto my iPad screen and identify where I want my drone to take off, and collect imagery. Once the imagery's been processed in the cloud, I can access it via the browser. I can see the photo locations, as well as inspect them to see what was collected at that particular location. Once processed, I can see my orthomosaic and get a closer perspective. This gives me the high-resolution imagery that I need to inform my research and orient participants when engaging in sketch mapping activities. The collection of oblique imagery also allows for the processing of 3D imagery, as we see in this point cloud. Using SiteScan's built-in tools, we can quickly get a profile of the landscape and understand the different elevations, as well as look at the proximity to the ocean for different buildings. This can greatly help when orienting participants with certain research questions, especially when pertaining to things like flooding. Finally, we can export and share the imagery that we process as well as the raw imagery with stakeholders. We can also upload it to ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. We can select just the imagery that we want to be shared. From there, we can extract building footprints from the imagery that we've created. And there's a variety of learn lessons and resources to help you get started using the Detect Objects deep learning tools in ArcGIS Pro. Returning to our example in Hopkins, we see no building footprints on the left. Swipe over and we see building footprints on the right. Unfortunately, my team and I digitized all of the buildings in Hopkins for all the years that we collected it. We didn't know about this awesome tool yet. The next tool in my arsenal was ArcGIS Survey 123. This allowed for the creation of simple or complex and intuitive forms that not only collected information with participants, but linked these data to a map, not only extending the interoperability of my research design, but also my data visualization and analysis. I can easily change the appearance and design of my survey and add categories through a drag and drop like this file upload. When I'm ready to engage participants in research in the field, I can launch my survey and have them go through it on a tablet or a smartphone in the field, indicating their demographics, the location of the survey, and what this place might mean to them. Unlike other survey forms, this not only inherently captures geospatial information, but a unique ID allows it to be linked across the ArcGIS system. So you can use this hosted feature service and web maps, applications, dashboards for analytics, analysis, or even to be used in other mobile applications. As built into my survey, the next step of research is to engage respondents in participant-led discussion. Semi-structured interviews about participants' perceptions of development and tourism in the community were then recorded with an audio recorder, and I took notes in the field. These were transcribed and coded using traditional inductive qualitative approaches. Demographic data that I collected using Survey 123 is visualized in the browser using some of the Analyze tools. Next, I'm going to show you how to build out a feature layer with coded values and domains in ArcGIS Online. We'll create a feature layer, specifically a polygon layer, and then we'll start to fill in our attributes. We'll identify our location on a map, create the feature layer by giving it a name and a summary, then we'll be able to modify the fields. We'll add some additional fields to help us inform our data collection, such as attachment level. This will be a string type. Next, we'll fill in these values. We'll create a list that'll help us to identify how participants feel about a particular area. From strongly disagree that they have a level of attachment to strongly agree that they feel a level of attachment to a location. Once we're happy with the design and fields in our layers, we can start to add contextual data. Let's add in an imagery service, such as our orthomosaic. You remember the one that we flew with the drone? Now that we have our high-resolution base map, let's add some structure data. Remember those painstakingly digitized footprints? Here they are. And the great thing is they have attribute data that we collected in the field. So let's symbolize that. We have use of structure, and we can symbolize it and see all the different uses. Here we can see this particular building is a church. Let's give this web map a name. Let's call it something intuitive so that we can find it easily when we're launching our applications. Next, let's verify that our web map is enabled for use in collector and field maps. We can see that it is. We're now ready to launch in field maps. We'll find our perception map. Let's zoom to collect a test point. I see Miss Birdie's library. We'll zoom in there and then use field maps features to snap to the polygon to collect the location. We can see that not only does it tell me the polygon name, but also the area of the feature I'm collecting. Next, we'll take a photo of the location in the field and snap a photo of the library. Next, we'll add some contextual information as well as some qualitative data. In the comments, we'll place what the building is, a library. We can put that we strongly feel connected to this location, the place name, any notes we might have, as well as why we feel connected to this place. These places are linked via participant ID to the semi-structured interviews that participants engaged in, providing more information about the effects of tourism and development, as well as why they feel particularly connected to certain spaces and places throughout their community. We have just scratched the surface on ways that GIS can enhance qualitative and mixed methods research. I hope that you've been inspired by a few of the approaches that we have shared here today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Lane. So we know we've given you quite a bit of information to take in. That's okay. Take your time. We do have a few extra recommendations and considerations for you. So for qualitative researchers, remember that GIS is yet another tool in your kit. GIS is your friend. So the idea here is to not restrict your methodologies or how you're going about your data collection efforts. Consider it. For GIS practitioners, qualitative data and methodologies can help provide that important context and grounding. And this could also be a way in for a lot of researchers who have never really worked with qualitative data to start incorporating that into their research. Different GIS tools can be used throughout the project lifecycle, so you're not limited or restricted to one application or one piece of software. Something else to consider is how you might need to adapt your informed consent policies and data use policies. So as you're working with more technology, and we'll all continue to do so, we have to consider how those participants might be affected, for instance. And as we go through IRB approval, we might have to incorporate a little more information within that. Limitations still exist, and we understand this. So many kinds of qualitative data are still not well supported in GIS tools. We have a lot of third-party applications and also some partner vendors that we work with to help with that and also help with being able to get some of that qualitative data into GIS. We also understand it's easy to get stuck in tools or lost in the terminology. We're very jargon heavy sometimes, and we kind of have a hard time relating certain aspects of our work. It is still a time-consuming and manual process. That has not changed, so I think that will continue to be there for a while. And we also understand there's a lack of integration between GIS and we'll have to work through this acronym with me, computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software tools. Whew, that's probably easier than the acronym there. So we understand that, again, there are some third-party vendors and some of our partners that can work with our software, and it's just a matter of finding that good fit. We have a couple of questions for you in the workshop, as this is our first time we've done a qualitative social science workshop. So we very likely missed a good chunk of something to discuss. So what would you like to see? What would you like to see improved in ArcGIS, either for qualitative or social scientific research, or even what would you like to see in another workshop of this kind, if you want to see one at all? Please take our survey. It's going to be at the end. And then you can also contact us directly at socialscience@esri.com. We have a QR code that you can quickly scan here if you want to take a look at some of these resources, because you're not going to be able to click on your screen, of course. But we have references for those studies and researchers that we reference throughout this presentation, throughout this workshop. And those can also be found when we send out and share out this presentation later on. Again, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we appreciate your time.